Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig, who co-wrote it with Noah Baumbach. What was first compelling to me really about the idea of this movie, because I remember the teaser for it, and that did not get me excited. The initial teaser was just of stereotypical Barbie, played by Margot Robbie, just lowering her sunglasses, and she's wearing, which evidently is the first outfit for Barbie, that black and white one piece. And obviously Barbie the doll has come so far since first debuting back in 1959, 64 years ago, created by Ruth Handler, who of course is a character in the movie. And Barbie, as explained in the movie too, the doll is named after her daughter Barbara. And then also Ken was invented in 1961, named after her son Kenneth. So Barbie and Ken Handler in real life are siblings, so and so that's cute. So much Barbie lore, like a lot of things I didn't know about, like the pregnant Barbie friend Midge, didn't know about that, didn't know about Sugar Daddy Ken and Magic Earring Ken, some interesting things there, so interesting Barbie lore. But for me though, what was compelling was first off seeing Barbie Land, when we started getting like trailers for that, and just the details of Barbie Land, of like the fake brushing the hair, like nothing is actually real, it's all plastic and everything. I'm sure like the set must have been absolutely incredible, and just like a dopamine rush, and just all the pink, and feeling like a kid again, and of course the slide to the pool, and there's nothing actually real, there's no actual water, no real food, all that stuff, like even the detail of you pick up your Barbie doll and just put it somewhere, you don't like walk it down the stairs, like just things like that was what was getting me excited. And then how you reach a point in your life where you don't play with Barbie anymore, just like with any toy, like you outgrow things. And obviously like Toy Story does that so well, because like I can't help but think of Barbie from Toy Story, voiced by Jodie Benson. I'm tour guide Barbie, like being so cheerful yet helpful and very smart, especially in Toy Story 3. But obviously Barbie then has had so many movies, like a lot of animated movies, and obviously this being the first live action feature film of Barbie. So that's not exclusive just to Barbie, as in reaching a point where then you hate Barbie, so to speak, and that's kind of just like with anything with childhood, where like then you outgrow it and you move on to other things. Because I watched a documentary earlier this year, I think it came out last year, it's available on Peacock, about Barney. It's called I Love You, You Hate Me. It's a 2-part documentary. I highly recommend it. I cried my eyes out watching it because I loved Barney. I realize I'm off topic, bear with me for a moment. But what I'm getting at with that is that there were people then who absolutely hated Barney, whether you used to love it as a kid and then you hated him as a tween, because like you're pushing against the saccharine nature of it and just like the tediousness, and like I'm sure parents then hated him because it's like so like makes you want to cringe of just like all the like it's not enjoyable to watch as an adult basically. So what I'm getting at in terms of with Barbie is that like then you like kind of, when you reach a point where like you make fun of things like that are quote unquote for babies, like, oh, I used to play with those, but then like you outgrow it. So that's not exclusive just to Barbie. And basically like pushing against the feminine nature of it, that Barbie, when you think of Barbie, you think of pink, and you think of like what Margot Robbie's Barbie says, that I'm the Barbie you think of when you say think of a Barbie, the stereotypical blonde Barbie. And that people have criticized the doll over the years for what's mentioned in the movie about unrealistic expectations for beauty standards, things like that. And then also like the contradictory message of how you can be anything, which is a great sentiment, but then it's kind of like, oh, then you fail if like you don't, you know what I mean? So it's interesting, all of these negative connotations in addition to just a doll, just a plastic doll, and then also just the detail of, for example, weird Barbie. Once you hear that, once you see it, you know exactly what that is. It's more often than not a Barbie that just winds up, just played with too hard, whether cutting the hair, drawing on it, like, more often than not it ended up naked, like, no clothes at all, just in complete disarray, an absolute mess. And yep, in the splits for sure, like I can just envision those Barbies. Because I myself never had one of those, because I always kept my things in pristine condition, not to brag, but I was just always so overly careful with my toys in general. And for me personally, I liked Barbies growing up as a kid, but they weren't my favorite toy. Like I loved Polly Pocket. I really, really loved Littlest Pet Shop. Like anything that was like little tiny toys were my absolute favorite. And so I also loved, with Barbie, I loved all of the accessories. I had Barbie bakery. I had a lot of Barbie and Kelly dolls, which evidently Kelly was discontinued. I didn't know that. Like she now is Chelsea. That's interesting to me. But when I looked it up, I just had a visceral moment of I haven't thought about this in years and years. And then for a visceral second, I was like a 3-year-old again. But it was like a Barbie and Kelly in a stroller. And it had like little pink accessories of like a little rattle and a little bottle. And it just like brought me back for a second. I was like, oh my god, wow, I had that. I also had this one where it was like Barbie and Kelly at the like little mini grocery store, like a little food item. So I always love little food accessories, things like that. And I never had a Ken doll either. So like ironically, with Ken being the accessory in all of this, Ken dolls weren't as, I'm sure, like not as in demand. I'm sure after this movie now it's going to be, you know, a resurgence of Ken. Absolutely. And that's just funny. But like for me, I remember just playing with Barbie and then pretending Barbie was like a single mom, like basically that the sisters were her kids. Like there's Skipper and what used to be Kelly, which is now Chelsea, and then Stacy, the baby. I don't know, but I find it all interesting because, like, as a kid, you don't think of any of this stuff. You don't think of the toxicity or the so-called sexism of the implications of any type of Barbie doll. Like, oh, well, why is she only in a kitchen, for example? But then, like, she's had so many other jobs, obviously, you know, like, so, like, the sexism of it. Or, like, oh, why is she always so sexily dressed? But, you know, there's so many different versions again. I also had, like, the school teacher ones. I remember, like, the little Chuck and, you know, like, just certain things now that come back to me. But what's funny is that, so going back to Weird Barbie, though I never owned one because, you know, I always was careful with all of my toys, really. But what was funny is that growing up then, like when I was starting to reach the age where we were outgrowing dolls, my friend had this Barbie makeover computer game, and I remember like us as 7-year-olds or whatever playing it and like giving her a nice makeover and everything. And then by like the next year, maybe we were a little older, like 8 or 9, I don't know, whenever we started outgrowing it and we just kind of like turned against it, I remember then playing it and us purposely giving her like an ugly makeover, like clashing green lipstick and bright blue or orange eyeshadow, like purposely clashing, and then we'd comb her bangs over her face. Oh my god, I'm in my memories here. But that was basically what I'm getting at, is that was my version of Weird Barbie. It's just funny how like kids taking out their whatever it is, like the creativity just because it's funny then, or maybe like intrinsically like you're just like now you find it dumb, so like now you want to just play with it differently, like whatever it is. But just like as a kid, you don't think of any of that so-called toxic stuff surrounding Barbie. You're just playing. It's just playtime. And so for me, like what I thought I would connect with more was just the idea of all of this in terms of, as a kid, you don't think of what it means to, like, you know, putting Barbie in a box, so to speak. It's like, because Barbie could be and has been everything. She's had hundreds and hundreds of jobs, but you just play, that's all. And still, like, even if she's dressed a certain way, you could just you use your imagination, basically. And as a kid, you just pick up dolls and play. You don't think about, like, oh, what am I going to make her say? Or, oh, you know, like, it's just like, you're in control, you're the doll is you, you know, you're just in bliss, in playtime with your imagination. And, you know, obviously Barbie just being a template of what you can aspire to be, but then also, like, oh, but then she's seemingly perfect, but then I'm not perfect, you know, but then you can't compare yourself to a doll, you know, and it's just meant to bring you joy. So like the irony that the Barbies think that they are, like, you know, that there's no problems for women in the real world because of Barbie, that she's carved this path of, well, you could be anything, so there you go, you have all the power and all the beauty. And so all that to say, like, with all of those messages in this movie, that what resonated with me were just the the quiet moments where Barbie is introspective and realizing that she doesn't want to be stereotypical Barbie anymore. She wants to be a human. I was not expecting that, and that was just very, very beautiful toward the end of the movie when Ruth Handler says, "You don't need my permission to become a human. Just close your eyes and feel." And it's very beautiful. And then seeing all these real moments from people's actual home videos and everything was just very beautiful and very touching. And also what I found so moving, that really is like one of my favorite moments in the entire movie, is when she's in the real world. And this was a moment that was evidently almost cut from the film, but then Greta Gerwig had said that if this scene is taken out of the film, then I don't know what this movie is about, because it's a moment where Barbie, it's like a turning point for Barbie. The moment when she's sitting on the bench and sees that elderly woman. So she's seeing age for the first time. And after she's just been, crying for the first time, she just tells her sincerely, sweetly, "You're so beautiful." And then the woman just smiles, "I know it," which got a big laugh, but I just found it so warm and so sweet. And again, one of my favorite moments, because then Barbie realizing she wants to be more that's kind of one of the catalyst moments for her, so just all of that. And I do love, though, the self-awareness of this movie, of course with Gloria's whole speech, and then when Barbie is upset and then she says, "But you're so beautiful," and she's like, "I don't feel beautiful, I'm not stereotypical beautiful Barbie anymore." And then of course Helen Mirren as the narrator taking a moment to say, "Note to the filmmakers, maybe don't cast Margot Robbie to make that point." That got a huge laugh too. That was one of my favorite jokes in the movie, because it's like, oh, there you go. And of course even Mattel being a character, and the part when Issa Rae as President Barbie swears, she's like, "Well, we took back the Barbie's house as Mother Effer." You see the Mattel symbol as the censoring the F-bomb. That was great. Oh my gosh. Every single thing, honestly, every single thing that anytime Ken was on screen, obviously Ryan Gosling as Ken, I love that he just full on went for it, and it was incredible. He was amazing, because Greta Gerwig said when writing this that she only ever saw Ryan Gosling in the role, so they had to convince him, as in her and Margot Robbie, because what I found interesting was that Margot Robbie actually is her production company. She came to Greta with the idea. It's would you want to write this movie? And then after Greta and her partner Noah wrote it, Greta said, "Well, I want to be the one to direct." And she said, "Absolutely." So there you go. That's how it came to be. And obviously Greta Gerwig has had some amazing films. She directed, of course, Lady Bird, and then Little Women, another version of Little Women in 2019. I've seen Lady Bird. I haven't yet seen her take on Little Women. I'm sure it's phenomenal. I will have to watch it eventually. So obviously this is a huge phenomenon, because you got the brand recognition of Barbie, but then also challenging gender norms and questioning. What's more so again compelling to me is questioning her existence. And do you ever think about dying? When she first starts having these thoughts of self-consciousness and everything, that was so heartbreaking too, but again so real. And then learning that it's connected to Gloria, played by America Ferrera, and just the whole thing of oh, I was just doing these drawings of crippling self-doubt Barbie and cellulite Barbie, all ridiculous things. So, but all existential things. So then her having all these thoughts and feelings that she never felt before, and feeling awkward and insecure and everything, which is kind of connected to growing up just in general, I guess for everyone really, but for myself too, growing up as a kid and then becoming a tween and becoming more self-conscious, and it's honestly devastating, but you have to the message too of you are enough is beautiful too. But again, or you are Ken-enough, I mean, honestly, Ryan Gosling was a Ken out of Ken. He was amazing. And all the talk of in all the interviews about Kenergy and finding his Kenergy, and there was another interview of him where he's the Kens are kenning so hard, they're kenning all over each other, and they're gonna ken themselves blind, and he cracks himself up saying it. Again, he went all in. There's another great YouTube clip of the things he needs to be a Ken. He has just book. He's got his sunglasses, and of course in the movie too, when he puts one pair on, then another pair on, because the poor Kens just being an afterthought to the Barbies. And it's interesting how then when the Kens take over with the patriarchy, because very simplified of, oh, well, the patriarchy and horses as a connection, but that when the Kens are in power with the imbalance of that, the Barbies are just there to serve them. Whereas when it's Barbies in Barbie Land, the Kens are just, they don't even matter. They're just there. They're just there to beat. I'll beat you off so hard, Ken. It's like, not if I beat you off, I'm going to beat you both off. No one's beating anybody off. That too was so hilarious and so ridiculous, and that was like an early thing in the trailers too, but and then of course Alan, played by Michael Cera, who's again just there to in the afterthought of the Kens, even just the one Alan, poor lone Alan, but he was phenomenal. When he tries to escape them, when he's with Gloria and her daughter Sasha, and he's like, I gotta get out of here with these Kens. It's like, once they figure out how to build that wall, not just going up, but also sideways. And he's like, no one cares about Alan. Alan's been in the real world before, all of in sync, ridiculous, so hilarious. And when he's fighting those guys, you want some more Alan? Poor Alan. So, he was so hilarious, though. I didn't know Alan was a real doll, too. That, he was Ken's friend, long forgotten friend, I guess. Again, the lore with all of these actual Barbies was really cool. So, that's the whole thing. It's wanting to feel seen. So, obviously, Barbie, the doll, over the years has changed a lot. And rightfully so. So many different versions of Barbie, not just one white blonde Barbie, because everyone wants to feel connected in that way and feeling represented. And so then with Ken, of just not Barbie not having any interest in him. And I was curious to know what Ken's arc was going to be, because it's obvious that Barbie doesn't love Ken the way he thinks he loves her anyway. The whole, again, so many hilarious moments, but basically him just always wanting to impress Barbie. And I just loved the sincere, genuine earnestness of Ryan Gosling's performance as Ken. The fact that he just has that childlike quality, but then it's just so sincere. Obviously, just the moments when he and Barbie are arguing and she's like, don't go far. It's I won't. Like a kid, ridiculous. But then also, just even toward the beginning, after he rams into the plastic wave, and then, at the doctors, and it's okay, you're already healed. He's like, oh, that's great. And he's like, Barbie, can I come to your house tonight? And he's crossing his fingers, so earnest in his love and adoration for her, which is so cute. And then later when he's air kissing her, so hilarious, so ridiculous though. And he's like, wow. And she's like, okay, you can go now. He's like, I thought I would stay. Why? Because we're girlfriend, boyfriend. To do what? I'm actually not sure. So hilarious. Oh my God. And then his rivalry with Simu Liu's Ken, when Simu Liu does the backflip, he's like, I'd like to see you try that, Ken. Jealous of all the other Kens. So I like that Ken came to a point where he doesn't have to fight with the other Kens. When the Barbies then turn their egos against them, when, it's okay, I'll play the guitar at you. And when, basically manipulating them because Barbie said to get their power back, which was kind of, again, that's not really right either. But the Kens, obviously, they took it too far with the anarchy of taking over everything and treating Barbies just there to serve them. But when Barbie then says, okay, I'm ready to be your long distance, low commitment girlfriend, whatever it is, and then he's like, can you excuse me one moment? Sublime! Oh my God. I can only, I'd love to see all the different variations of that, the different takes for that, and different things he must have said. I'm sure that's absolutely hysterical. And Margot Robbie had said that it was hard for her to keep it together, just laughing because of how committed he was and how over the top and so funny. I can only imagine. And then I get it that she's not in love with Ken, but how can you not be? Just a moment to just praise Ryan Gosling. I mean, when he's playing the guitar and then of course singing Push by Matchbox 20, I was first off, I love that song. I love Matchbox 20, but it's just so silly and so dumb. Oh my God, I wanna push you around, well I will. And then 4 hours later, on the beach and then the Barbies start screwing with the Ken's heads, it's oh, excuse me, she's texting, it's who are you texting? Ken, and then they start switching it up, just paying attention to other Kens, so then the Kens implode on themselves and then have their Ken off, their whole beach fight and everything. And, the poor Ken. So then when Barbie then recognizes and apologizes, saying, I'm sorry, not every night had to be girls' night, I'm sorry I took you for granted. That whole scene, too, where he's hysterically crying, and then he's like, oh, it's okay. He's like, huh? Like, so just trying to play it cool still, but then so, like, earnest, and then still trying to be like, I don't know who I am without you. It's always been Barbie and Ken. And then she says, maybe it's Barbie and it's Ken, as in we can coexist, and you have to find out who you are without me. And so letting her go, and her, like, apologizing though too, which needed to be said, because it wasn't right how they were treating the Kens before. The imbalance of that wasn't right. And then when she says that you have to figure out, like, maybe all those things you thought were you weren't really you, and then, like, that's when she has that realization with herself too, like, being stereotypical Barbie, like, always feeling pretty and perfect, that there's no such thing as perfect and everything, so then, like, he throws his faux mink coat and everything, and, like, just the whole thing of him, like, taking her in his arms. She's like, no, Ken. And he's like, oh, I'm so dumb, and, like, he, like, smacks himself, like, the whole outpouring of so much emotion. And again, like, it was all beautiful. The song too was amazing. The dance sequence, I'm just Ken, amazing. When they ride up on their imaginary horses, oh my god, like, so much beautiful stuff. Earlier than in the real world, when they're rollerblading in those bright neon outfits, and then Barbie having those first moments of self-consciousness, and then Ken's like, oh, I'm admired here. It's like, oh, you respect me, like, all this ridiculous stuff. And then when the guy grabs her and she punches him in the face and they get arrested, and of course, like, another iconic thing too of their mug shots and him, like, smiling, holding up his name, like, so dumb. And like, it's just so much ridiculous stuff. Like, also when she points at the, like, sign of the Miss Universe pageant, it's like, oh, look, it's the Supreme Court. He's like, oh, they're so smart, like, so not learning yet. Oh boy, like, oh, poor Barbie. And also, like, when they catcall her, and then she says, oh no, well, I don't have a vagina, he doesn't have a penis, we have no genitals. And he's like, I have all the genitals. Like, so, like, I loved all the ridiculous humor of that. I loved, like, the childlike thing of the Kens, like, when they have nothing to do, they're just beach, and then, like, with Ken's whole meltdown, then when she's like, no, like, you're not any of those things, he's like, beach, no, not even beach, like, and then when he's finally wearing the sweatshirt, like, I am Kenuff, he's like, thank you, Barbie. So, he comes to a place in his own way of self-actualization, and that he has to find who he really is. But he is Kenuff, so that was wonderful. And then obviously Barbie's journey, when she decides that she's no longer stereotypical Barbie and she's ready to be human. So I did love all that. It was really sweet. And all the stuff with the Mattel, like, with the Mattel employees, they were kind of like childlike too, obviously, because Will Ferrell as, like, the Mattel CEO, like, so much ridiculous stuff with him too. Them being, like, dumb and, like, blind to their own sexism of, like, it's all dudes, no women. And then America Ferrera's character not even being in the meeting and everything. She's an interesting character too, because, like, when we meet her, she's working on those drawings and she's hiding, like, her pink shoes. So I like that they come to a moment of understanding, her and her daughter, like, so that was really sweet. But also, just, like, the set dressings obviously were beautiful. Like, them going through each of those scenes to get to the real world and then back to Barbie Land, like, in space, and the campsite and the boat and everything was so beautiful. Props to the production design. Like, give them all the awards. The production, the costumes, the actors, honestly, the writing. Like, here's hoping for some Oscars for this movie. It was wonderful. All that fun stuff. And, like, again, all the humor. But then also, the Barbies, in a step forward, like, recognizing that Barbie Land, the way it was before, wasn't right either. And then President Barbie apologizing to Weird Barbie too, saying, like, sorry for calling you weird behind your back and to your face. Like, that's not cool either. And then the Kens getting at least a little bit of power. It's a start, like, hopefully it'll be more balanced as time goes on. But it's like both in either direction aren't good, and, like, the toxicity of all that. And so that's why when Ruth Handler says, and also, like, with Ruth Handler, and then when Will Ferrell says, like, oh, her ghost keeps in office, like, so ridiculous. That was so funny too. But when she says humans only have one ending, and Barbie saying, I understand, and it was sweet too when she's saying, like, like when Ken was crying, she's like, oh, it's okay to cry. I've cried a few times now. It's actually really beautiful. And so like her wanting to experience all of that, like all of the hardships, despite like, that's the beauty of being a human, that there are hardships, obviously also the beauty and wonder of being a human, and her wanting to create things and make things. That's really sweet too. And so the nuances then again going back to Barbie Land, like when things weren't perfect anymore and she's on her flat feet and stuff, and like the pretend eating, and then like the milk has expired and like the waffle was burnt, so that was all cleverly done. But when she's coming to terms with that she's not who she once was anymore, now she's experienced all of these things, she wants to be human, so that's really cool. And so with like Ruth Handler saying, oh, I never envisioned this for Barbie, like she keeps surprising me, so that's just really cute too. And that line where she says humans, like, ideas live forever, humans not so much. And it's true that Barbie will live on forever. And it is amazing to think that Barbie, since 1959, like, has spanned generations, and whether you've loved or hated Barbie, like, you can't negate the huge impact that Barbie the doll has had, so it's incredible. And it was good that they did recognize that not everyone loves Barbie. That's completely understandable, showing like the unrealistic nature of like what is perfection. And then Ruth Handler saying, like, so humans invent things like Barbie and patriarchy to like deal with these things. So again, it's like wanting to break those barriers of like the things that seemingly hold us back, and like literally don't put yourself in a box, like when they were going to put Barbie back in her box. It's like, yeah, you know what, Barbie really can be anything, so it does circle back to that message. And also I just have to say, it just reminded me for some reason, the whole thing with then when stereotypical Barbie and her existential crisis, like then when she like falls to the side, like just some really hilarious things like that too, like owning like the doll logic, the doll physicality of that. But then when they talk about like have the commercial for depressed Barbie, and like oh, she's watching BBC and she's eating Starburst till her jaw hurts, and she's looking at engagement photos of her estranged friends like on Instagram. I'm like, oh, that's too real. Oh my god, too funny. So again, like not putting all these expectations. And then like when Gloria says, how about just ordinary Barbie, ordinary is enough, like you are enough, so that's like a good message just for everyone too. And so like it's just so sweet that at the end where you think, oh, maybe she's going on a job interview, Barbie, wonder what she's gonna do. And then I'm here to see my gynecologist, she's got her vagina now. Too funny. She's a real woman. So that was just too funny. But like for me, like reflecting on Barbie the doll itself, like I said, I had several Barbie dolls, but then I also would play a lot of Barbie video games. Actually, I had like, there was a lot of Game Boy Color ones. There was like a pet rescue one, and like the ocean, like her as a deep dive Barbie, and there was like a genie one I would play. I'm just like remembering all this stuff now. And then there were Barbie coloring books, and there was that Barbie makeover game, like I said. Then I got into, as I got a little older, this Barbie website where you could just like play some mini games. And there was like this other Barbie CD-ROM that I had where you could like direct where they go in the house. It was kind of like a Barbie movie maker, kinda, but not really, because like you couldn't make them talk or anything, but it was just kind of like seeing them animated walking around. And so basically it's like, if you hate Barbie, like why? It's like, are you challenging because like you hate this idea of stereotypical beautiful feminism? Like sure, that's valid, but it's like, it's just a doll. So basically it's like not putting so much into it, but then also recognizing it's like, hey, it's not for everyone. If you don't like Barbie, that's perfectly fine, So overall though, like as I'm saying all this now, I did really love the movie. Like I laughed a lot. It was really hilarious. I really, again, loved the self-aware humor. I always appreciate stuff like that. And so it was really heartwarming and sweet, just like the warmth of Ruth Handler as the creator of Barbie, and just, like Barbie then having the newfound autonomy and becoming a human. And then of course like just the nods to all the ridiculous things that you do as kids, like in your childhood, where you're just free play and anything goes. It's all in your imagination. So like it's just all like fun and colorful and vibrant. That's all really beautiful. And then of course, the music too is beautiful. Like Billie Eilish, like that song she wrote with her brother Phineas, What Was I Made For? And her performing that was beautiful, absolutely beautiful, stunning, heartfelt song. That was very touching too. And then of course, like the remix of Barbie Girl, sung by Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice, was wonderful, playing over the credits. And then showing the actual Barbie dolls, which I didn't know a lot of them, so that was really cool seeing, like, again, just like Barbie over the years and like the different Barbie dolls and everything. So that was really funny, so Barbie is amazing. Ken is amazing. Ken is Kenuff. Ken has all the Kenergy. I come up with all the puns. Ridiculous, but too amazing. I thought it was so funny too, like in the marketing of this movie, how they mentioned that they had completely like run out of pink from one of the companies they were using for pink, all the pink paints that they had to do. That's too funny. I can't wait for hopefully like bloopers with this movie. I can only imagine like just cracking up at Ryan Gosling and how amazing he was as Ken. So good. Oh my god, like just him like crying, like so fantastic. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. So hi Barbie, hi Ken. And with that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Be sure to check out storytellingsaga.com, and as always, feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next episode, I will be discussing Season 3 of the iCarly revival, because I've got a lot to say about all things Creddy. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.
And I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull in a Ken. Like Jazzy, Stacy, Nikki. All of the Barbies is pretty. All of the Barbies is bad. It girls, and we ain't playing tag.